Chapter 5. Cleaning out my closet. Regrettably, my parents divorced for the first time when I was about 2 years old. Yes, the first time frankly indicates 2 joyous marriages and 2 bitter divorces. Mom was awarded custody after their first divorce, which led to a lifetime of uncertainty for me. After the divorce, I didn't see my father enough, missing many priceless years with him. He was lucky if he discovered where Mom was hiding. We jumped around so much that we must have hit most apartments in the state in which we lived. Dad didn't see or hear everything that my mother did to us. He wasn't completely innocent. He knew what Mom was capable of, but I don't think he ever thought she would, or could, do such wicked things to her own children. When he'd locate where we were, Mom usually held us for ransom with money. She often baited him into brutal fights, and I was her favorite hostage to use as a weapon against him. I don't recall how many homes we lived in before I turned 10 years old, nor do I remember the total number of schools I attended. We were basically vagabonds. The earliest residency we stayed in long enough for me to remember was a faded yellow house around 1980. The atmosphere of the house was always dense with anxiety, a virtual house of horrors during my developing years. Mom was an unspoken ghost in that house. I didn't see her often, so she didn't feel tangible or real. Her shadow flickered in and out of my life like prime-time commercials. If we left the house with even one bag or box in the car, I anxiously wondered if we were going back. There was no safe place to call home. I knew no sense of permanence, lived in emotional chaos, and always felt completely powerless. My mother, sister, brother, and I were like drops of water in a vast ocean, never remaining in one location long enough for the law to catch up. In these early years, my sister and I were very close. I often wonder if I would have survived in that house without her. I depended on and needed her in so many ways, and she was only 16 years old. Sadly, I've never known my brother. Every time I thought I may have a real big brother, his sad habit of running mindlessly from love and family prevailed. As children and tweens, my sister was a protector, my brother an oppressor. As I gained some length of bone, my first word was moo. It was hysterical to everyone when I threw my head back and simulated the same yawning moo my plastic toy cow produced. I was merely imitating what I heard the most every day, a synthetic toy. I didn't have an inkling as to what a mother was, so when my language teacher finally expanded past simplistic animal sounds, I called my own mother teacher. "I need my shoes, teacher." I'd have everyone questioning why I would place a T in front of all my first words. I would say, "Shoes, socks, feet." Nobody knew why, except for the person who spent the most time with me, myself. The T in my words was actually a substitute for the word to. I learned the entire alphabet and some numbers from listening to a time-worn Sesame Street record. This was my main form of entertainment for years. In one catchy song, Big Bird sings, "I've got 2 eyes, 1, 2. They're both the same size, 1, 2. I've got 2 eyes, and they're both the same size." I sang along, actually feeling like a kid as I hopped up and down on my bed. Mom rarely came downstairs where my room was, so I'd leap without a care in the world, except feeling lonely. In the washed-out blonde house, Mom preferred alcohol, especially Ernest and Giulio Gallo red wine. She literally kept gallon jugs, lined up like soldiers, in the farthest corners of her bedroom closet. I first saw the stockpile when I was 7 years old. I knew it must have been bad because it was concealed, but I had no clue what alcoholism really meant. In a few years, Mom transferred her alcohol addiction to a conglomerate of prescription opiates. These became her drugs of choice. Abusing prescriptions, she took handfuls of a colorful myriad of pills, like popping M&Ms. She could take 6 or 7 Vicodin from hand to mouth in seconds, slugged down with the dregs of her coffee or Diet Coke. She took high doses of amitriptyline for her depression, and Avapro to counteract the high blood pressure the amitriptyline may cause. Lithium was taken so the amitriptyline didn't make her feel too good. Synthroid was taken to counteract the damage the lithium had done to her thyroid. Consistently nauseated, she would take Donatol for stomach pain, caused by a belly swimming in bitter pills, not to mention what was available to her over the counter. Jesus, always so many pills. She wanted, and needed, to feel better. Some of these drugs kept her as close to normal as possible, but that's a lot for anyone to swallow. When she was high, her slurred speech became incomprehensible. On occasion, I think I preferred her in a catatonic state. It was relatively safe. I learned early on never to disobey, cross, or question my mother. She had an iron fist and a profound psychological hold on me. I also knew that making myself invisible meant less punishment. I knew at 6 years old that if I asked for nothing and kept quiet and out of the way, the chances of confrontation were much less. An early memory of this fearful obedience occurred when I was about 6 years old. My brother was an unbelievable soccer player. I think we were going to one of his games. I was wearing a light dress, and it was a beautiful day. Arriving at the park, my mother parked and pointed to a large pine tree, sternly telling me to go sit underneath it and wait for her. "Don't move until I come get you," she said strictly. "Okay, Mom, I won't. I promise." I promenaded towards the tree and stopped dead in my tracks. An enormous anthill encircled the entire tree. Dozens of intricate caverns and underground colonies the ants had created were woven into the stately tree's thick roots. They were organized, and hundreds more surfaced instantaneously due to my presence. Narrow black thoraxes and abdomens scurried everywhere. There was nowhere to sit that wasn't carpeted with ants, and to a young girl, these tiny ants were spine-chilling, with mean pinchers. Mom told me to sit down and not move. Replaying her demand in my mind made me snap out of my hesitation, fast. I plunged to the ground and crab-walked to a thick root with the least number of ants. "Hurry up. Sit down before she sees you disobeying." I positioned myself carefully but hurriedly, knowing there was no bite from any animal that could hurt me as much as my mother could. The ants went on the offensive, and I was covered within seconds, but I didn't move. I watched in horror as one ant held onto my skin with its mouth, curled its abdomen, and stung me. The tingling started first. I tried swatting them away, but there were too many. "Don't move until I come get you," I repeated in my head. For the first time in my life, I wished she would hurry. The stings were quickly swelling into bumps on my elfin legs. I felt nauseated and started to sweat. By the time Mom arrived, I had been stung by so many ants I had to be taken to the emergency room. Doctors told my mother that if I was ever stung by that many ants again, or even that type of ant again, I could have a severe allergic reaction and or die. I remember the wearisome healing process more than the nightmarish event itself. It was dawdling and annoying. The bites were like mosquito bites, but got scabby after a couple of days and itched like poison ivy. This event inaugurated the lifelong pathology between my mother and myself. I was frightened to leave my small bedroom. I was a nervous wreck every night, eyes flickering anxiously around the room for monsters known and unknown. And adults. I was afraid of adults because grown-ups did bad things. I had an unusual fear of the dark, and never felt safe or comfortable as a child. Although grown-ups can forget, children can't. They can only be lucky enough to block and suppress such memories. Someone broke the rules in my young life. It's indisputable. I have no yearning to remember who. I honestly feel like there were too many. I assume our bodies fight tooth and nail to repress some pain for a darn good reason. When I was 8, a bizarre man scrambled through my bedroom window in the middle of the night. He said nothing as he broke through the screen and slinked himself through the small basement opening. This massive black shadow of a man landed 2 feet from my bed, and I didn't know who he was or what he wanted. My heart beat out of my chest. I was so petrified with fear that I wet myself a little. Would he kill me? Hurt me? Fortunately, my sister heard noises, flicked on a light, and stomped bravely into my room. She found herself standing face to face with him. "Get out!" she yelled daringly. "Get out of here!" I was astounded by her courage. To me, she bravely carried herself like a superhero. Apparently, the intruder was one of Mom's ex-husbands. I think it was the bank robber, but I didn't know any of Mom's former husbands very well. Evidently, Mom kicked this one out that night, but he indignantly wanted back in. I was deathly frightened of the dark, wet the bed for years, and was particularly afraid of men. I couldn't help but wonder if this was the first time he had done this, or merely the first time he was caught. If I had to get up, especially in the middle of the night, I warmed up on the bed to get some momentum first. There was no way I would dangle my feet over the bed, proffering myself up for the monster underneath it. I would jump a few times and then leap with all my might for the bedroom door. If I didn't land on my feet, I could still scurry away faster than the snarling beast below. I never offered it any chance to seize my feet and yank me underneath my bed into its murky underworld. There was no nightlight to light the shadows. Even the bathroom was far too sinister and too long of a distance for a gutless child, so I consistently wet the bed. I didn't want to get spanked for it, so I covered the stains with bath towels. The urine soaked through the towels, so I usually shivered in the cold. I bathed alone, but I wasn't doing a very good job of caring for myself. In the 3rd grade, I got an unbearable case of lice. It was only discovered after I begged to sleep with my sister one night, and she discovered a louse on my pillow. I felt like a repulsive animal with no sense of self-worth. I never had a voice, so I never said a word. I had no concept of trust, so I regarded everyone as untrustworthy. I didn't really learn anything in grade school, and never felt as though I fit in. I had low self-esteem and a poor self-concept. I couldn't comprehend what the teachers may have attempted to teach me, and I slipped through the system. I experienced a long-time knowledge deficit. I felt stupid, so I didn't like school. I became just one of the guys, a reserved tomboy who was often clad in the same gray Adidas sweatsuit. There were no bright pinks or flowery clothing in my everyday wardrobe. Contrasting with my adorable cheerleader sister, I was a boy-like inner competitor, joining in games of tag football at lunchtime, not afraid to break a sweat. I generally kept my long brown hair in a ponytail. I always tried to brush it before Mom did, constantly afraid she would drag and pull me through the house by my hair again. God forbid I had a knot or two in the back from rocking, which meant more agony. Mom would become exasperated with the modest chore quickly, huffing that the part wasn't straight or that my pigtails didn't twist. In her annoyance, she always hit me with the brush or burned the top of my head with a curling iron. Sometimes, after a good wallop on the head, I'd experience brief darkness and double vision. My whole skull would be sore for days afterward. I know it's wrong, but I didn't particularly like giddy girls hunched over lunchroom tables and gossip, sporadically teeming in phony laughter. I had no opinion about which celebrity I thought was hottest, or the crush of the day. Envy had never been a monster for me, but I inescapably did not enjoy seeing kids wearing brand new sneakers while I painted mine white for years. I didn't like scrutinizing other kids, who had no clue how lucky they were to have elaborate backpacks, Twinkies lovingly packed in their lunchboxes, and beautiful, glittering folders, not the kind the teacher begrudgingly gave you because your mother never bought supplies. Yet they grumbled. All I thought about during class was my grumbling belly and what was going to be served free to the poor kids like me at lunchtime. I daydreamed about food many nights. Mom would often forget me, so I started to walk to and from school by the 1st grade. Percolating with fearful anxiety, I usually ran the entire way. I was afraid of unknown cars and strangers who would hurt me. When I walked, I was completely hunched over like an elderly man. I could have represented the letter U on Sesame Street. Mom started making me hold my head up by forcing me to walk with books on my head. I looked like I should have been in a Pink Floyd video, screeching about not needing no education. Every day, I wanted to come home and share my day with my mom, but I couldn't. She would be inside her bedroom with the door locked, the disease triumphant in the ongoing melee inside of her. Her personality changed so often that I didn't really know who she was. I didn't know her at all. I began to have full conversations with myself and stuffed animals. When your mother is checked out of reality, you frequently have to find ways to feed yourself. When I was about 8, I overheard Mom tell someone her fiber pills made her feel full. I began to take them almost daily. I took these diet pills so young because I didn't want my stomach to growl inside a quiet classroom. Other times, I'd swallow my grandmother's Freedent gum to quell off the ever-embarrassing rumble. I was afraid my peers would hear it. That's so upsetting. Aching with hunger one afternoon, I scoured the refrigerator. Although it wasn't entirely empty, I had no idea how to make anything, so it may as well have been. I found a deli-sized bag full of cheap Bundig lunch meat. Remember those? 4 for $1 at the local King Soopers? It was outdated and was coated with a layer of slime. There was no bread. Knowing it might not be there tomorrow, I jammed the entire bag of meat into my mouth and tried to swallow chunks whole. This, and many experiences like it, noticeably led to consistent and nasty stomach aches. I didn't have many friends. I didn't know how to make friends. As a mother, I now know that this is the age where parents throw birthday parties or meet one another for future sleepovers, but that never happened in my world. I couldn't cross the street, so my realm was condensed into 2 immediate neighbors. A little boy my age, with sandy blonde hair and sweet blue eyes, lived next door. We innocently pet-kissed in my hideout, the backyard shed, one day. I have no idea how either of us decided to do it, but the small kiss was blameless and delightful. In my world, adults were usually unkind and unpredictable. I often thought the kissing was why his mother was often short with me. I was afraid of his mother. She didn't hide the fact that she didn't like me, for whatever reason. If I was daring enough to knock on their door, juddering in fear, she often said he wasn't home or was not allowed to play right now. I wish I could have made her realize, or at least empathize with, what it felt like to be under 10 years old and not have a friend. I thought there was something wrong with me.